Hello, everybody. Welcome to Get Ready to Pivot, Navigating Career Transition Q&A. This session is hosted by the UMass Amherst Alumni Association. Welcome and thank you for joining us. So for tonight's session, I just want to introduce the people that are behind the scenes helping to get your questions to the speakers. So my name is Karen Schultz-Battistoni. I'm the Director of Alumni Volunteer Relations. And with me is Laura Freeman. She is the Constituents Program Coordinator. So the two of us will be monitoring the chat box. So if there's any questions that you have for the panelists or any questions that you have in navigating Zoom, please feel free to reach out to us in that way. So on the bottom of your screen, you have chat and you also have raise hand. If you raise your hand, then that way we'll know to reach out to you through chat if you have a concern or an issue with your sound or your volume. And chat is where you can submit all of our questions. To just make you aware, for tonight's session, we are recording it. All attendees are on mute and your cameras are turned off. So the only cameras that we have enabled tonight are those of the speakers. By participating in tonight's session, you are consenting to being part of a recorded session. After the recording is made tonight, what we will do next is we will take the session and send it out to have the closed captioning added to it. And then we will post it onto our YouTube channel for the Alumni Association. And then you'll be able to access the recording at any time. All right, now I'm going to turn over to introducing today's panel. So I'm just going to introduce the three of them by name, and then we're going to jump right into your questions because the format of this tonight really is Q&A, focused on your questions that you've submitted when you registered and also the questions that you're submitting to us tonight during the session. So the plan is I'll introduce everybody and then we'll start off with our first question. And then as each person answers their first question, they'll introduce themselves and give you a little bit of background about their background and experience with today's topic. All right. So for tonight's session, we have David Mahowski, class of 1994 with his master's in education. He's the co-founder of Campus to Corporate LLC. We have Erica Madison, class of 2003, career coach and consultant with Sunrise Strategies. And we also have Douglas Reese, class of 1995, director of recruiting at Bullfinch Group. So welcome to our three panelists and UMass alumni. And now we're going to turn it over to our first question. So our first question is for Erica. So the question is, how do I go about switching careers? How can you change industries when you've been in a specific industry for 20 years?
Thank you for having me, Karen. I'm excited to be here tonight. During my career, I've pivoted from state government to higher education to environmental advocacy and again to higher education. In addition, I've assisted dozens of career coaching clients with navigating their career pivots to different roles, industries, issue areas, and sectors. I've learned that what often holds us back is not our actual inability to make these shifts, but it is our belief that doing so is impractical or even impossible. So I'm here to tell you that it is possible. Believing this and having the confidence in yourself are two of the most important ingredients for making a career pivot. In addition, it's valuable to read a wide array of job postings as well as bios of people whose work interests you. As you do this, develop a list of the relevant skills and experiences you possess, as well as any qualifications you do not possess that could present learning opportunities for you. You likely have many transferable skills, such as researching, managing projects, conducting data analysis, or client relations, which can be applied in a variety of roles and settings. Through your personal branding, interactions with your network, application materials, and interviews, you can tell short stories which showcase that you have relevant skills and experiences that make you prepared to help your target organizations overcome their challenges and achieve their goals. Happy to have any additions from my fellow presenters.
So David and Doug, I don't know if either one of you want to chime in on anything else on that one, or we can go to the next question if you like.
I'm happy to chime in briefly, and I'll keep it short, but
Yeah.
you know, people
Sure.
career pivot all the time. You know, I've done it myself, and probably every one of us speaking has done it at some point in our lives. You know, I think Erica's point about getting out there and talking to people is critical, and we all have transferable skills, and it's a question of understanding how to articulate them and how to present them to a new industry and showing an interest. But I don't think I can stress enough showing an interest in getting out and talking to people that are working in the target area and really just starting to develop those connections and alliances. And then you have people pulling for you. To me personally, experience, I think, has always been something that's overrated. And I think that career pivots can happen all the time. You have transferable skills. An example of experience being overrated for me is somebody who's, say, working in 20 years in a field or position, and they're bored or they're burnt out, or potentially they're just incompetent. That's not somebody I want, even though they have a litany of vast experience. I want somebody who's got that fire in the belly and who can sell it. And you can be able to do so by really having good conversations with people that are out there doing what you're hoping to do and learning from that, and then kind of taking it and distilling it down to your message as to why and how you want to get involved. And I think this can play out all the time. I think it does play out all the time. This is how people career change every day. And interest. I can't oversell that.
Okay. Doug, you're on mute right now. It looks like you were trying to say something.
Can you hear me now?
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I would add that, you know, as someone who has also career pivoted several times, you have to be passionate about the role that you're interviewing for. That shows in interviews, and it also allows you to create the strategies that you're looking for. You know, I was asked a question, you know, how do you career pivot? And transferable skills, I couldn't agree more. We hired a transferable skills. The days of one skill and staying with one company for your entire career are pretty rare in today's day and age. And really looking at things that you're passionate about, skills that you have, things that you've picked up quickly and learned from are always important. Specifics to mention when you're talking to someone. And I think I agree with David. Networking is key. And when we were preparing for this conversation, you know, just in '95, when I was looking for a role, there was no LinkedIn. There weren't very many alumni associations. I didn't know there was a UMass club in downtown Boston. I think in today's day and age, the ability to you know, to pay it forward. I think anyone who would call me and say, can you give me some advice, whether they're interested in roles that we're hiring to or not, there's just something inside of me that I would always give back, really to anyone, but especially someone who, you know, went to UMass and has something in common. I'm always more than happy to share any experiences.
Okay. Great. Thanks, everybody, for chiming in on that. That's helpful, I think, to lay the groundwork for this conversation. I do also want to mention to people that we acknowledge that we are in unique times, and we really hope that people can use tonight's information as one part of the pieces of information that you use to make your decisions. We'll talk at the end about some additional resources through the Alumni Association, so we hope that this information tonight can kind of help get you excited about things and give you some direction and some examples as well. So the next question that was submitted was, how do you know what career to transition to? And David, if you can take the lead on this one.
It's both a great question and a tough question, and it's very much up to the individual. A lot of people don't know, and that's where the exploration comes in and chat. I think it's probably safe to say that many of us have divergent interests, a diversity of interests, and we could probably see ourselves doing many different things. And going back to Doug, Erica's comments about networking and talk, I think that's a huge and valuable asset today. And like Doug was just saying, that the times have changed and we have access to so many resources at a keystroke, and the variety of opportunities through LinkedIn, through the UMass Alumni Association, cafe culture, whatever, wherever you're meeting people is a great opportunity to chat and find out more. And I think that with that, you can kind of distill down where you'll see opportunities that are going to be of interest to you, and where you see your skills and your, going back to Doug's comment, that passion, that fire in the belly, where it can be useful. This is actually one of the tougher questions, because I think it's very different for very disparity of people, but coming up with where and what you're interested in for many people is an obstacle and a roadblock. And I think the only thing that you can really do, there's not a quick fix or a magic, a magic button. Talk, and more talk. Networking, and networking, I think, is really key.
Okay. And David, can you also, I was just going to ask David if he could talk a little bit about your background too, as well, because I don't think you got a chance to mention that.
Oh, sure. Well, I've worked in education for many years, Smith, Mount Holyoke, and I was at UMass as a graduate student. I've had many hats myself and career pivoted several times, working in human services, working in sales, working in education. I have a combination of things right now, working and through this alumni association. I run a farmer's market. I write and do photography for a magazine group out of New Zealand. There are several different hats that I wear, and I like that. I like that variety. And I think that maybe as people are starting to think about the idea of a pivot, you may find several avenues to explore, and that's okay too. You don't have to lock yourself or pigeonhole yourself into any one thing. That you might be able to piece together a mosaic, which we go around once. I think it's kind of interesting to be able to do so, actually.
Okay. So then the next question, how do you build a final career that's different from the one I'm doing today? And this person said that they're 59, to give a bit of perspective on how long they've been working. So Doug, if you can take the lead on this one and introduce a little bit about your background, and then give some thoughts on building a final career that's different than the one they're doing right now.
Absolutely. So my name, thank you for having me. I know I've already chimed in. So Doug Reese, I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition at the Bullfinch Group. We're a holistic financial planning firm, more of a boutique-like firm, and I've headed up our hiring for the last 8 years. Prior to that, I was in consulting and traveling, helping offices around the country hire talented individuals, entrepreneurial-minded individuals. I think we've touched on this question a little bit. I would share that I'm not sure age matters. I know it doesn't matter to us. I think it comes down to passion. I think it comes down to transferable skills. And I think it comes down to some of the experiences that you might be able to bring to the table. David mentioned this, and I couldn't agree more. You have to sell yourself, and you have to anticipate that you're probably going and competing against several individuals for that role. So really pointing out what your strengths are, and if it's the right fit, if you're the right fit within the organization, they'll see those strengths and they'll see what you can add to the organization, and things will work out. The only other thing that I would add, and it builds off of the pivoting question, is I know there are a lot of career counselors, and I know that there are a lot of people out there that truly would help you and just have conversations. It takes initiative on all of our parts to make that happen. Anyone has 5 minutes for a conversation or a cup of coffee to help and learn, what someone else does, to see if we're interested. But taking that initiative would be key. And I also would add that there are different assessments through outplacement firms and through different consultants. And I'm sure that there are others on the line. Eric and David probably know some. where I know outplacement firms, they will ask you what interests you, and they will guide you in different directions and give you 2 or 3 different career options that they think you might be interested in. So that might be another idea.
Okay, thank you. The next question that we have is, the person indicated that they need to switch careers due to an injury that resulted in some permanent restrictions. Any advice for my next steps as we're switching careers? David, if you'd be able to take the lead on this one.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things one needs to do, and that's kind of assess where the injury, if you will, where the limitations might be, and to see where the skills and abilities that you have, where they can be best placed, and what industries or organizations can use that to the benefit and gain. I think that it could be an interesting transition too, as you're doing a little bit of research and finding out organizations that have capabilities for accommodations. And I don't know what the injuries are, but the accommodations that are out there from various organizations and industries should hopefully make you feel quite welcome. And then it's a question of understanding what those industries are, those organizations, and as Doug just said, selling yourself and bringing yourself to the table and showing what you can offer and that you want to offer such, and getting involved and being a vested component to them. But I wouldn't see the limitation due to the injuries as a limitation in the job market. It's going to just force one to maybe be a little bit more selective and do some research and find out what's out there that is well accommodating for you and interesting.
Okay, great thoughts. Thank you. The next question we have is, how do you start over without having to start at the bottom? And this seemed to be a bit of a theme that ran through several questions that were submitted. Erica, if you'd be able to take the lead on this one.
Sure, thank you, Karen. While making a career change does sometimes require you to be more willing to move to a more junior role, that's not always the case. Don't make the mistake of underestimating your relevant skills and experiences. For those of you who have several years of experience, when reading job descriptions, you might start by looking at the more senior positions for the type of work you're interested in, as opposed to starting with the entry-level positions. You may surprise yourself at what you are eligible for. As you do this, assess how your strengths and experiences match the job description, and use this as a gauge for determining whether to look at more junior positions. Don't let the stated number of years of experience deter you from applying if you have been developing relevant experience for anywhere near that number of years, going back to something David said a few moments ago. However, certain positions include very specific requirements, such as experience leading multi-million-dollar fundraising campaigns, managing large teams, or conducting highly specialized or technical work. In these cases, be honest with yourself about whether you are properly equipped to do the work. Also, while job titles do provide some information about the level of seniority, they can also be misleading because similar level positions can vary widely in their titles depending on the size of the organization and other factors. And as always, with career development, relationships matter. And Karen, I didn't introduce myself earlier, so I will say that I am class of 2003, UMass Amherst, majored in psychology. I went on to obtain a master's degree in public administration and then a law degree from Suffolk University. I've been providing career coaching services and strategic consulting for about the past 6 years. And full-time, I work in higher education, leading communications for Boston University Sustainability.
Great. Thank you for adding the part about your background. I'm sorry, with everything happening, we want to make sure that people have the context of all of our speakers. So
absolutely,
thank you for making sure that you added that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it. As we go to the next question, this person was asking about how they might gain experience in a new field in order to pivot my career. And some people also in the chat box have asked for an example of a transferable skill. So I think that this kind of works together. So David, as you talk about gaining experience in a new field, I don't know if you can mention as well some transferable skill experiences, examples as you're talking about the gaining experience.
I think one way to gain experience today really is to volunteer. I mean, I don't think I can put a big enough stamp on that. Volunteering gives a few things. It allows a few things to happen. I mean, it gives you a good assessment as to a potential role or career path. It definitely helps you network, and it puts yourself out there to the players that are making decisions. It's a great sort of litmus test too, if it's an industry or an organization you even like. So it's a great way to try it out without any real strong commitment. You know, when you mention the transferable skills, I think the most important one today is probably just the social EQ. If you have that ability to manage and work with people and engage with people, and have that again, the social EQ, you know, that mark that you can go into an organization and work with people and work around people, work through issues, work around issues, make things happen without stepping on toes. I think you're proving yourself valuable right there. So being able to integrate well is going to be a key component. I think any organization is going to be looking at your experiences and your resume and all the things that you offer tangibly. But if you're not a good fit, those skills then don't really mean a whole lot. So we've got to show them and showcase that we can be a good fit and that we can interact with such a range, a variety of people and a variety of cultures and a variety of types. So through volunteering, I think you can learn a lot. Through networking, as Doug said, you can learn a lot. And I can't overemphasize the soft skills and how important they are today to successfully navigate a transition.
I would add just a couple of things. I mean, just I would agree with everything David said. I mean, I think it's important when you're talking about transferable skills. You might hear that someone, you know, I'm a great leader, or leadership characteristics, or sometimes there's, you know, I'm a great manager. I think being prepared to give examples, and in resumes and in conversations, it's especially relevant when you're talking about transferable skills. You know, if you can lead, if you can sell, if you, as David was saying, if you're a collaborator, and you have that team-oriented type approach, talking about those specifics is one thing. Giving examples is another, and telling stories around difficult situations that you were in and how you were able to work through them. Those are always key points that, you know, anyone you're talking to or interviewing with will remember. They'll remember the stories.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good point to draw upon. And we have another question then too about gaining experience. We talked a little bit about volunteering, but sometimes the issue for folks can also be trying to find enough time to gain that experience if you're still working in your current role and you're trying to transition into a new role. Doug, I don't know if you have thoughts on how to gain that experience and balance the fact that you're currently already working a full-time job.
Yeah, you know, it's funny, and having done this, I'll speak from experience. I think you have to create kind of an ideal week for yourself, right? You have to do your role and do your job so that you're not forced into looking for another role. So you want to do it on your terms, and setting realistic and reasonable goals. I mean, could you do a coffee meeting and a conversation a week, which is reasonable? It's probably a half an hour total or an hour total. I also think there's a lot you could do on your own, whether it be education, and you know, there are different certifications that you can pursue. There are self-study opportunities that are both online and offline. I also think that you know, we call them market surveys. But talking to people in the role at different firms, and I think Erica, David, and I all alluded to this. You know, if you reach out enough, you will find people who are willing to have conversations with you. and every conversation that you have is a great learning experience. And I would also highly suggest you keep notes, because it does get, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, whether it's your phone, whether it's, written notes in a notebook, you end up learning more about roles and industries than you realize. So hopefully those are a few nuggets that are helpful.
Okay, great. Thank you, Doug. So the
You're
next
welcome.
question also draws a little bit on that experience. And the question came up, is it worth it to spend time and money on a course and training to get additional relevant experience? Should I prepare for a pay cut if I need to go back to entry level? So it looks like this person is trying to weigh some of the financial costs of the training, and then also perhaps the future of needing to save for later on if I'm going to have a pay cut. So I don't know, Erica, if you've got any thoughts on this one?
Sure, thanks, Karen. So I would recommend that folks use job descriptions to help you determine trainings or certifications that are essential or maybe preferred for the type of work you want to do. Also, as was just mentioned, I would recommend consulting with people who are doing that type of work before you spend any kind of substantial money or time going and getting certifications that you actually don't need. So that's where having relationships and cultivating relationships with people who are doing the type of work that you're interested in or might be able to introduce you to those people is really going to be valuable to you, because it gives you that sort of insider look into the industry and what's really necessary. Sometimes job descriptions are very aspirational. It's sort of a wish list of what the employer hopes to find in a candidate, but they often recognize that they're not going to find the so-called perfect candidate. And so you don't want to go invest all of this time and money getting these certifications that you don't need. So start small. Maybe there's a free training or something that's just a few hours that you can do to sort of dip your toe in and see, is this something that I think I like? Because sometimes something sounds really great on paper or from something you hear from someone, but then when you personally start to get involved in it, you say, gee, this isn't really right for me. And it's better to find that out sooner rather than, months or tens of thousands of dollars, down the road. But, give things a chance. I would say be open, try different things. You never know what's going to, be a great fit if you're not sort of willing to try things out.
Okay. So a follow-up question that kind of, I think, connects with all of the recent answers everyone was giving in terms of experience and connecting with people. A question came in through the chat box asking about volunteering, and the person indicated that they have been getting some resistance when they've been offering to do some volunteer roles. They say that they already, have enough staff support to do that. So any suggestions on how to approach organizations when you're trying to offer people your time and your skills?
Again, I think it really, comes back to relationships. You want to sort of put yourself in the shoes of who you are approaching. So imagine two scenarios. One is where you basically cold call an organization or fill out a form on their website and say, hi, I'd like to volunteer. They pretty much know nothing about you, and it sort of puts the responsibility on them to research you, figure out who you are, maybe what you're good at, how many hours a week you could give, and everything like that. Versus scenario B, where you look at your network, you look at who you know, what kinds of work they're involved in, and I don't just mean their full-time paid work, I mean, what boards are they serving on, what organizations are they involved in, everything like that. And then you are, going through your network to maybe get an introduction to somebody who's a staff person or a board member with, I'm thinking of nonprofit organizations because that's where I've spent most of my time. And there are so many needs out there, but it can take some persistence. And I think it's always important for you to do most of the research and the work so that you're making it easy for people to know who you are, what you're about, what you can do for them, what are your skills, how do your skills align with what you perceive to be their organizational needs based on the research you've conducted, and about how many hours a week do you have to give. Right now, people don't really have the excuse that they don't have office space for you or anything like that, because you'd in most cases right now be working in a remote capacity anyway. So that actually reduces a lot of the barriers. And there are so many needs out there. So I would say that if you are having a hard time connecting with an opportunity, try the things that I just said, and hopefully you'll be able to connect with something.
Yeah. So as someone who receives a lot of those emails, Eric, I couldn't agree with you more. If someone sent me an email and said, I saw your company, it's really interesting, do you have any internship opportunities? That's one path. Another path is, I happen to see your company and, and this really interested me. Your core values I found very interesting and they align with my core values. And I saw that you're friendly with Erica and you both went to UMass, maybe you know each other. It's a little bit more. If someone goes to you, Erica, and sees that we're connected and then makes the connection to me, it's 100%. So you're just increasing your chances for a potential internship opportunity. I think that this could easily be transferred into a job as well. If Erica walked a resume over to me and said, this is a friend of mine, it's David, and he's a great guy, and I think he'd be a really good fit for your firm, I'm calling right away. If, I get an email, there's probably something on David's resume that I find really interesting, but there's more leeway there. Whereas with Erica's endorsement, it's going to go a lot further. And I think you're taking the responsibility and putting the time in makes all the difference in the world, and it shows.
Awesome.
Really good advice.
That was great. Yeah. So the next question we've got is, can you speak to a challenge of being a beginner in a field after you've been an expert in a previous field? So sounds like it's a bit of a shift in thinking then, you were an expert before and now you're a beginner. So thoughts on that challenge and approaching that. And David, if you could take the lead on that.
I'm sure. I think that the first thing that comes to mind to me is that if you're finding it a challenge, then maybe you're not just willing to learn. And I think if you're willing to learn, it won't be that challenging. That if you're in there with that sort of openness and that willingness to engage and willingness to intake what they're needing you to know or trying to teach you or trying to impart on you, it'll probably transition from challenging to interesting, and that would be the goal. And if it is interesting, you probably have found yourself a nice fit in an organization. And if you are showing that interest, you're going to go from kind of novice, nascent status up the ladder, I would think, pretty quickly, depending on what the organization is. But I think the challenge there can be opportunity. You just need to be willing to learn and willing to kind of take that onto your shoulders and run with it.
Okay. So in terms of entering a field where you don't have any experience and background in that field, what advice do you have for someone who is going into that new field? Erica?
I would recommend starting by determining a list of your target organizations. Then you can conduct research to further familiarize yourself with those organizations, such as their mission, their values, their goals. Do things like read their annual report or at least skim it. Look at what they're posting on social media. Look at their news page. For instance, they might have press releases. Really get a feeling for what this organization is about, what their industry is about, what kinds of challenges they're facing, and then you can start to understand how you fit in with what it is that they are focused on. So as we talked about earlier, you want to prepare for answering behavioral questions. These are extremely common in interview settings. And basically this means that they're going to say something like, tell me about a time that you, and then fill in the blank. So you want to review, there are websites that give you common behavioral interview questions. go through those and then come up with some short stories that are applicable to a number of these types of questions. You know, it might be a time that you overcame a challenge, a time that you worked effectively as part of a team, a time that you built or grew something. These types of questions. And then, you know, you're going to tell these stories in a way that demonstrates the alignment between your values and the organization. You gain experience, you know, as we were talking about, by volunteering or conducting a pro bono project, so something free of charge for an organization that conducts work that you're passionate about. And this is going to help you gain credibility, awareness, skills, relationships, and it will give you something, hopefully, that you can add to your portfolio. For instance, on a site such as LinkedIn, which is a really important part of your job search and your career development, because loads of recruiters and hiring managers and so forth are on LinkedIn. That's often the first place they will go to look you up. And so you want to make sure that you have a robust, up-to-date LinkedIn presence, and you're not just passively there, but you're actively engaging with people's content. This is really a way of building relationships and helping you establish credibility in your desired field, industry, and even the types of roles that you're most interested in.
I have one thing to add, and
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of really good advice there. And I think in you know, as I think about some of the interviews that I hold, you know, one of my first questions that I ask is, you know, tell me a little bit about yourself and help me get to know you. I've already done a pre-screen on the phone with them at this point. I have their resume. I have their LinkedIn profile. So as you were saying, Erica, you know, I've done my homework, and I am testing to see if they've done theirs. And there's a fine line. We're not looking for people who are overconfident and have inflated egos and go on and on and on about talking about themselves. But that fine line of being able to sell yourself, you know, without inflating, without having an inflated ego is really important. I want to hear about people's successes. I want to hear about previous experience they've had. I want, you know, I will give you an example. The question prior, you know, where, you know, you go from a role where you were an expert to being brand new again. One of the things we talk about in our firm when we are hiring someone who has been a business owner and is entering into our business and has a lot to learn is they have to be okay with not being okay at certain points, and they have to trust the process. And, you know, if that's going to be difficult for someone, it's going to be an uphill struggle. You know, you join the firm or you join the role for a reason, and you have to be okay with you know, not being okay all the time and not being the expert, because if you are that skilled, you will be the expert in time.
Okay. Yeah. And the next question is kind of transitioning a bit in terms of job seeking. So there's a lot of jobs posted on Glassdoor and Indeed, but this person is asking and stating that it seems impossible for a seasoned professional to get an interview. So I guess this lends itself a little bit to where you see job postings, how you find jobs that you're applying for. And David, if you could talk a little bit about that.
I think it kind of distills down to what we've all been talking about. And I think, you know, it's marketing 101. I mean, you've got to know the audience to whom you speak and to whom you're writing to. And whether it's Glassdoor or Indeed, or if you're having your resume passed on to somebody through a contact, if you don't have materials that speak to that prospective employer, or you bore them, or you're not making connection, it's not going to do well. And vice versa, if it speaks well to them and it shows you've done your homework, if you can talk to them in ways that tell them that you understand what their world is encompassed by and that you understand what keeps them up at night. And if you plug in what you've done historically in terms of experiences and you can relay them in a way that makes sense to that organization. I think Doug just brought up this point where you want to hear about those experiences, and I think that's certainly true. I want to hear about those experiences also, but I want to have them projected also into my world and to see kind of where you take those experiences and how you would apply them to what my world is involved with. I think it's also valuable that if you are a prospective employee and you're writing to an employer, and if you can identify a problem and have a solution, or better yet, identify a problem that they don't know they have and see some heavy weather coming down the road. And if you can identify that and maybe shortcut something for them, that's a great possible hire for me. I want that person on board. I want somebody who can see something I'm not. So I'm looking for somebody who approaches me in a thoughtful way, in a comprehensive way, in a way that shows they've done their homework and that they're actually interested. Again, I can teach them what I need them to know, but I can't teach them to be interested and run with what we give them. So I need to see that from the get-go. They've got that fire in the belly. And if I see somebody who's writing to me with a degree of curiosity and good questions, and then taking their history and kind of injecting it into my world, I think I've probably got a good candidate there. And again, whether it's Indeed or Glassdoor or whatever, you've got to say something that kind of piques their interest. I mean, the whole idea of the resume, cover letter, approaching somebody is to get them to pick up the phone, right? So we need to say something that's going to be unique and just strike a fancy with them, really. And that depends on the industry and it depends on the individual. But I think that needs to be a thoughtful component of your approach, that you're trying to make a connection and want them to reach back out to you.
Yeah. As someone, I use these tools and I, we do hire quite a bit. I really good advice. The one of the most important things, and again, if you're at a smaller firm, maybe they are looking at the resumes. If you're at a massive firm, there is a good chance that for any Glassdoor or Indeed role, they are receiving thousands and thousands and thousands of resumes, and they are just doing keyword searches. So a lot of the things we talked about in terms of being unique and transferable skills, you might not have an opportunity if you just apply and hope that they call you back. So one of the things that I think, Erica, you had talked about, and this is the same advice that I gave my sister, and I give my daughter if she was looking for a role, is if you've targeted, and I think Eric and David, you both mentioned this, if you target certain companies, find people you know who work there. Find connections of connections. Find UMass grads. Figure out a way to get a warm introduction so that your resume is going in on Indeed and going in on Glassdoor, but is also being walked down or emailed to HR from that company's email address. Because right off the bat, you're showing that you're creative. You're showing, David, I think to some of your points, you're unique, you're different, you're taking initiative, doing some problem solving there. Those resumes are going to get looked at 100% of the time. And if you get your chance to interview, then you have to do all the things that we talked about. But that warm market introduction and figuring out a way to try to get an introduction into that company is one of the most powerful things that you can do, whether it's LinkedIn or doing research in another way, shape, or form, or finding industry conferences, figuring out where those people congregate and bumping into them. Something creative so that it's not just passive would be another, another nugget to share with you.
And I just want to add to,
that it's important to really try to get to know the industry by doing the kinds of things that Doug was just saying. You want to also think of it as, how do you become a known entity within that industry? So I'll give you an example. I've spent a lot of my career working in higher ed sustainability. So focusing on, how do we make our institutions more environmentally responsible? And, it's kind of a pretty small industry. people really know each other. They know each other through the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education, which puts on large annual conferences and other convenings. They know each other through regional organizations within that industry. They know each other, especially if they're within the same geography. So, schools in the Boston area, for example, many of the people working in higher ed sustainability know each other. So you want to start to be somebody who is known, and known in a good way. So you want to, as Doug said, basically be in the places where these people are. It's just like the marketing that David was talking about. If you're selling a product or raising awareness about a political candidate, for instance, you don't expect everybody to come to you, right? You go to where they are. And even in this virtual setting that we're in, there are many ways to kind of be so-called, be in the room with these people. And in fact, I would say that it's actually much easier now in many ways to associate with people who maybe you don't yet know, or to join new organizations, or sit in on a webinar or a conference, and then follow up. That's really crucial. Being on the same webinar with someone, fine. But if you take it upon yourself to then send a personalized invitation to connect on LinkedIn, you start following the people on LinkedIn who you want to get to know more about, and you put forth something that you have to offer. That's really how you're going to stand out and be able to grow your network, and that's really going to help you with your career development.
Yeah. I think LinkedIn is really a big feature right now for people, and it's a huge tool that people can leverage, and there's a lot of great conversations happening there. So I think it's really helpful that people are able to give some perspectives on that. So thank you. Trying to get to a few more before we run out of time. I know we've got a lot of questions coming in. Erica is helping to answer some of those, and some of those we're bringing forward to be able to also do out loud. So we're trying to do the best we can to get through everything. So thanks everybody for bearing with us in the process. So in terms of when you have to start at a position at a lower or a junior level because you had to change careers, any thoughts on how you could negotiate for a faster promotion because you had to start at this junior level because you were doing that pivot? And Doug, I don't know if you have thoughts on that to lead us off.
I don't have a lot of experience, but I do have a lot of thoughts. I think that, one of the things I know I was taught was, you negotiate up front, and you got to do a good job negotiating, because they're going to be hiring, companies going to be hiring from the outside, and sometimes to hire outside talent, they're going to demand more because, they have to make that move. For me, and what I've seen, it's always about results. And it's about, saying to someone, I know I can do more, and trying to negotiate the, an early potential increase, maybe a 6 month or 12 months. But then you have to go and deliver, and you have to go above and beyond. I have seen this on the other side when you're negotiating, and if you're not happy with raises and you're not happy with the progression you're making, as unfortunate as it is at times, sometimes you have to make a move. If a company's just not willing to pay market value, and you think you're worth more, and you're able to find a role in a similar field where, the responsibilities are similar, sometimes you do have to be willing to make that move, because not every company is going to negotiate with you, and not every company is going to allow you to grow internally either. So just a few thoughts, but don't have a lot of experience with that one.
Okay. Any additional thoughts from Erica or David on that when you're starting off at a more junior level and you'd like to try to accelerate your income a little bit and see if you can leverage any of your past experiences a little bit better?
I want to go back to something David said earlier, which is, I think we've had a lesson lately that putting all of our eggs in one basket, either financially or in terms of our career, is really risky. And so thinking about how you can diversify yourself and your career, just like we talk about diversifying investments, so that we won't be hit too hard when, a particular industry, gets hit really badly. So the way that David was talking about his experience, same with me. I work full time and I do consulting, coaching on the side. That's something to think about. What can you monetize that's actually outside of your main professional work? If you're a great photographer, can you monetize that? Can you start a side business to do photography as well as doing something else? So that's going to help people be more resilient and adaptive. It's really important to be adaptable and resilient. So I would encourage people to think about, really investing in their side gigs, and, you'll see where it takes you, and you can probably really enjoy it as well. And it can be a great balance.
Yeah. It's funny, Eric, as you're talking, I do have one additional point, and it was some of the best advice I ever got, and it was my first role right out of school. And I was really fortunate. It was a flat level management company, and there were 40 employees, and I was employee 40, and 6 years later, I was employee, there were 90 people at the firm. And I think one of the ways that you earn your way internally is to make yourself an invaluable asset within the organization. So when you do go to them and you do ask, their first thought is, I don't know what we would do without Erica. I don't know what we would do without David. And a lot of that is hard work, and a lot of that is putting the time in. But you don't want to be expendable. You want them to think that life would be extremely difficult without you there at the firm or the office.
Yeah. I think right now I think we're having a great conversation, and we've been answering a lot of questions. Right now, I'm going to just transition quickly to mention some of the resources available through the Alumni Association. So several of the things that have come up in the conversation as we've been talking about it, people were asking about different interview tools. We have something called Big Interview, where you can get practice interview questions, record yourself, and then with that recording, you can download it and then share it maybe with a career counselor or a friend or a mentor, or just watch it yourself to get feedback on how you're answering questions and coming across. We've really been talking a lot as well about selling your experiences and really showing how your experiences connect with their needs. So in terms of selling your experience, I did send an email out earlier this evening to everybody linking to an article that Erica posted on LinkedIn about branding and selling your experience. So please check that out because that can give you some additional details on how to leverage things. Assessments was something else that came up as well. So we do have some career assessments online. All of these tools that I've been mentioning, if you go to umassalumni.com/career, you can access them. Our career counselors, we have 6 counselors. So David and Erica are 2 of our counselors, and all of our counselors meet with people either virtually or in person when that's possible, and if geography allows for it. But for a lot of people, it's a great way to unlock those next steps and to talk through your specific situation, because we acknowledge that we're just really glossing on the surface tonight and answering some questions, but some things you may want to go more in depth. With career counselors, the first session is free. Additional sessions, you get a UMass alumni discounted rate. So for a lot of people, they say that was great because I could start a conversation and I was talking to someone else with UMass experience and with experience helping people in situations like mine. If you go to umassalumni.com/events, you can see information about all our different events that we have going on. We are planning networking events virtually as we head into summer and fall. And then we're also, going to be watching to see if we can do some things in person as well. So watching that events piece and making sure that your email is updated with us will allow you to get those updates so that you can see invites to upcoming events. Now I would like to just turn it back over to the panelists to ask them for a final closing thought as we think about today's session and career pivoting. I know for a lot of people, there's a lot to think about and navigate and discern. So final thoughts on next steps and takeaways. So I don't know who'd like to lead us off.
I could jump in if it's all right.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think the first thing that comes to mind is that with the COVID times and restrictions that we're all under, or that many are faced with, not everybody, but many, this is a great time to retrench and to do some research and to have conversations. And if you are pivoting or career changing or expanding or whatnot, probably no better time to be doing those reach outs where people have some time to chat, some resources to share, and some movement can be had. It's sad that we've lost 20 odd million positions, but I think as we come out of this, we're going to have 20 odd million positions come back in many ways, and maybe they'll be shaped slightly different, but it means new opportunity. So this is a great time to prepare for that, I think.
Yeah, thanks, David.
Yeah, I'll go next. I think, we heard, and I just read some of the chat questions, and Erica, you're amazing to be able to contribute and answer the questions along the way. There's some really great points. There's a couple things that stand out. I agree. And you have a degree in this, I don't, but it's not failure. It's a learning experience for people. And, every single person on this call has failed at plenty of things. The question is, how do you respond to that, and how do you use it as a learning experience? There are companies hiring. Position yourself, put the time in, be different, be unique. The little things matter. We were talking about a lot of them. The personalized, the LinkedIn message is one thing. The personalized LinkedIn message is another. The thank you notes. A lot of the things that were in place a long time ago, they're going to differentiate you, and you want to be unique, and you want to be different in a very competitive marketplace in a positive sense. And there's the word that we often use, and I'll close with this, is being pleasantly persistent. And you have to know when enough is enough, but you also have to follow up enough, because a lot of people are busy, and if you think one phone call and a response is automatic, it's highly unlikely. 2 or 3 follow-ups, that's okay. With the third follow-up saying, I know you're busy, if you'd rather I not reach out to you, people will let you know. And I think it's important to be pleasantly persistent.
Mm-hmm. Erica?
Absolutely. Pleasantly persistent is a great way to be. It'll help you earn a great reputation, and it's important to put yourself in the shoes of your audience, to try to imagine what they might be going through, and how you can make it as easy as possible for them to say yes, whether it's an informational interview or to offer you a job. So, do that research. It will come across, it will be extremely obvious to people whether or not you've put the time in and you've prepared and you've done your research, or you have not. And I would say that oftentimes, I was going back to what I was saying at the beginning, with career pivots, a lot of it comes down to having confidence in yourself and believing that you can make a pivot. It's something that happens all the time. You might have heard, negative things from people in your life who sort of scared you into inaction, and you might have, gotten comfortable in a certain situation, and it's just easier to stay where you are, even though you're really not happy. But it's worth making thoughtful risks, taking thoughtful risks to create the best life that you can have for yourself and do work that's meaningful and fulfilling. So I wish everyone the best, and I look forward to being in touch with you after this evening. Take care.
Yeah, thank you, Erica, Douglas, and David, for answering so many great questions, and also Erica for helping to do a little extra and answering more in the chat box than we could get to in the question answer in the dialogue. So in the next few days, attendees, you'll be getting a survey that we ask you to complete just to give us feedback on this session, and also let us know what would you like to see next. It's with that feedback that we can create content that's relevant to you. So we wish you all the best with your pivot, and hopefully the resources through the Alumni Association will be valuable to you and useful to you. So thank you so much, everybody, and have a good night. Take care.
Thank you.
Math.
Go UMass.